Okay, let's listen to fucking my favorite liberals that have like some minor aesthetic differences, but not even all that much, talk about the comings and goings of Russia and Ukraine.
There, I mean, not just seems to me, it's pretty obvious. There are no good options. When deterrence fails, there are no good options anymore. And the grave failure of the West was that we spent 30 years basically thinking that bad people are not bad people if we talk to them strong enough, and if we negotiate with them, or if we ignore.
Like, what's your suggestion, Ben? Huh? What is your suggestion then to Russia? How would you have dealt with Russia? How would you have dealt with Russia differently? I love these guys, man. They're so awesome. They're like, the reason why Russia is invading Ukraine is because we didn't talk to the bad people like they were bad people. We talked to them like they were good people. Awesome. Yeah.
Or them taking pieces of territory in Georgia under Bush, or Crimea under Obama. If we just ignore it hard enough, then maybe it sort of goes away. And now deterrence has failed. And it seems like the world order is radically reshifting. Like the United States, we seem to treat this as almost a natural disaster, like a thing happening far away. But in Europe, they're treating this as an epic shifting event. And they're talking about rearming. They're talking about forming new security alliances with Eastern European countries. Where do you think this ends up?
I think this is actually turning out to be, I mean, obviously what's going on for the people of Ukraine is horrible right now, but I think in the long run, I think it's going to be a good thing because, first of all, Putin is being shown to be way less strong than we thought he was. I mean, this is, I don't know what the opposite of blitzkrieg is.
Quagmire. Yeah, I mean, he's
Yeah,
quagmiring. Yeah.
right. It was supposed to be a cakewalk. So was Iraq. You know, I'm so surprised that he actually did it because it wasn't really necessary. I tried to explain one night on my show that I think a lot of this comes from he thinks he's the savior of the Russian people. I think when you get to that level where he's been in office, he's been in absolute power for 20.
I love hearing stuff like this because it's just cool to hear like what kind of new ways they're going to come up with. Like,
Regardless,
they
Ben
have to
sister
come up
has
with
some
like a
big old
reason.
titties.
Everybody wants a reason for why things are happening. Okay. And it's like it's gonna be fun. It's always gonna be a good time. Like, especially if it goes beyond just like, oh, he's just a bad guy.
20 years. What is left? What's in the soul of a man? He wants to be a hero, and he thinks this is the way to do it. I think people know this is history major stuff, but Kiev, or Kiev, I guess how we say it now, is the ancestral home of Russia. It's the beginning of the Russian state from around the year 1000. I'm not saying that that gives them a right to take it. It is a completely different nation now. It changed. It's not even part of.
Wait, so you think there wasn't a particular reason he was just bored? No, the particular reason is controlling the Ukrainian production of oil and gas, and also controlling Ukraine that is in its backyard, and ridding it of Western influence, as he has stated time and time again. That's what I think his ultimate goal was. Numerous other reasons on top of that. When he says, listen, when Vladimir Putin says like Ukraine and Russia are one people, they're one people, they're one people. That's the add additional justifications for people listening at home. But liberals usually look to that and go, unmistakably, that's the name one Jewish person. Yo, do you even know a Jewish person? What the fuck does this even have to do with Jewish people, what I'm talking about right now? Is it because you saw me fucking shit on Ben Shapiro and immediately you're like, oh, dude, you must hate Jews? Like, my fucking podcast co-host is Jewish, dude. What the fuck? My most regular guest on this broadcast is such a stupid thing to defend, by the way. But my podcast co-host, I'm gay and I hate gay jokes. Hey, Austin, we get it. You're a top. Hey, Bob the Builder 01. Fucked. Your friend is Jewish and he has a black friend. Yeah, I know. Whenever you mention that, that's a defeating argument. Like you can just easily be like, "Oh wow, look at him naming Jewish people now." Well, I mean, he requested it, but anyway. As I was stating, there's always a financial, materialist component and a real reason as to why countries, governments, people behave the way that they do. Okay? And then they add ideological seasoning to their actions. Or they add, spiritual reasoning to their actions. Whatever it takes to sell the idea.
Russia anymore, but that is, and I think that's what is in his mind, is I'm going to reclaim this. Yes, the Russian state moved to Moscow, but it's almost similar to the way Kosovo. I mean, when Milosevic started the Balkan Wars, it was all about, the year was 1989. It was the 600th anniversary. In that part of the world, that's like yesterday. That's so foreign to the way Americans think. But it was 1389. There's this battle in Kosovo, which again, not even part of Serbia anymore, but it was the ancestral home of Serbia, and we got to get it back. And this, I think, is what Putin wants. That is what he thinks in his mind. And what he's finding out is that not only do the Ukrainian people hate him for doing this, but the Russian people hate him for doing this. They're like, are you crazy? This is not the world we live in anymore. We're on TikTok now. We can see dogs getting shot and families being torn apart and things blown up, and we're a modern country.
Wait, what? Dogs getting shot? That's what... Dude, white liberal brain damage. First thing that comes to mind is dogs being shot, dude. I love that. Sorry.
Country or trying to be one. Look at what are you doing? So I think it's just going to turn out horribly for Russia. The question I was going to ask you is, do you think it was the right thing to not only keep NATO going after the Soviet Union fell, but to encroach right up to Russia's borders? Because a lot of people don't, and
yes.
I don't.
I actually do think that, I think that, here's the thing. If you are going to make overtures to a nation that they should try to join NATO and then not back it up, that's the worst thing you could do. So we took sort of the worst path with Ukraine. We were encouraging them, maybe you'll join NATO, maybe you won't.
Wait a minute. What the fuck? Uh-oh. Is this a good take alert? What's happening?
Join NATO. If you make an overture, maybe we'll consider it. And so that leaves them in an incredibly vulnerable spot, because we're basically saying to them,
but he's like, dude, you're a neocon, brother. There's no fucking shot. Unless I guess maybe he just feels like you can do that to smaller nations, but you can't do that to Russia.
That you have to make overtures to us, and meanwhile Russia's on your eastern border, and so Russia's looking at that, going, "No, we're not gonna do this at all." If we had wanted, if you're gonna make a move, make it strong. In other words, if you're gonna have Ukraine join NATO, make Ukraine join NATO, and you make sure that they have the armaments necessary to defend themselves, and you have a mutual alliance pact. If you're an independent armed nation, by the way, right now, to me, the one long-lasting ramification of this that's incredible.
No, by the way, no. He took the other side of that argument, where he said, you should have made Ukraine join NATO immediately and arm them, and that you should arm every other country as well and make them join NATO as well, is what he's saying. Never mind.
Incredibly dangerous. If you're a non-aligned nation right now, you don't have a mutual defense guarantee with either China or Russia or the United States. How fast are you looking for a nuclear weapon right now? I mean, you are looking like hell for a nuclear weapon.
Fuck. Okay, I'm back in. He's right. And you should.
weapon right now, because you don't want to be in a conventional war with a major power.
Seems like Ben Shapiro has been watching the HasanAbi broadcast. That is straight out of a that is literally just in the HasanAbi doctrine. He just repeated the HasanAbi doctrine. Come on, dude.
But that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you 30 years ago.
Yes.
1991. Okay. What should we have done then? The Soviet Union fell. NATO was formed specifically to counter the Soviet Union and communism, which now was no more. Why keep that lines going? Why not?
I hate that they're not having a bad conversation about this. This is like shocking, making me upset. God damn it, dude. What the fuck?
Invite Russia at that moment. Boris Yeltsin took over, right? Invite them. You're one of us now, as opposed to keeping this organization going past the point where it had.
Well, that was the overtures were made. They just said, lol, no, obviously not. The entire point of NATO is the fuck Russia pact.
A reason to be going.
I mean, the question is whether you really thought that Russia.
Why are you so nasty to people? I'm a fucking nasty freak, dude. Your first comment in here, brother. What's going on? You haven't even seen the nastiness if you think that I'm being nasty. Oh no, is agreeing with someone you don't like? No, I agree with people I
Russia
don't
was
like.
going to be and develop toward being a friendly nation to the West or not. If you were skeptical.
But that caused them not to be.
I mean, I wonder if that's the case. I mean,
Jesus Christ, this is some Bill Mahar, like the people were brave for flying the planes type take right here.
Well, we'll never know. But if they had disbanded NATO and said, "Look, we're all capitalist countries now. We're not fighting communism anymore, and we're not fighting the Soviet Union because it doesn't exist. So we should stop having this organization which treats you like the enemy and bring you in."
So I disagree to one extent, which is that you'll notice that there are a bunch of nations that Putin has attempted to invade. Not one of them is a member of NATO. So I think Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia would all be Russia right now if we'd gotten rid of NATO. I mean, Finland has been bordering Russia since 1949 as a member of NATO. All of these nations.
Okay. Wait, as a member of NATO? Wait, what? Wait, he just making shit up. Like, he literally, did he just realize that, like, Finland's existence kind of destroys what he meant with, like, Latvia and shit? So he had to just lie about it and be like, Finland's been there since 1949 as a NATO member nation. That's just a lie. You just straight up made that up. It's 2022 and Finland is still not a part of NATO. And also Finland's existence as a neutral country up until this point kind of disproves Ben Shapiro's theory, which is part of the reason why he's saying they'd 100%. Finland is not part of NATO, but he's right about the Baltic states. They'd 100% be part of Russia if they were not NATO right now. I mean, dude, I hate to admit this, but it's 100% yes, they would. They literally would. There would be some kind of fucking Russian pact or ones that have existed that would absolutely add the Baltic states into it. Straight up. They would. 100%. But Georgia isn't? Yeah, because Georgia was invaded after George W. Bush said, we are going to... What do you mean? The reason why Georgia is literally invaded is because George W. Bush said that that Georgia and Ukraine should be invited into NATO. That's when Georgia got invaded by Vladimir Putin.
Extent, which is that you'll notice that there are a bunch of nations that Putin has attempted to invade. Not one of them is a member of NATO. So I think Latvia, Lithuania, and
So should NATO exist? I'm confused. No. I don't think NATO should exist. I think in the absence of NATO, I mean, this is like literally we're doing complete fucking revisionist history here. If NATO wasn't built, if the Marshall Plan was implemented exclusively not for influential gain amongst Western European states, but exclusively to rebuild Europe for no reason other than just rebuilding Europe. If the USSR was allowed to continue its dominance, if the USSR was allowed to influence and offer material support to communist parties all around Europe, and NATO was not used as a counterbalance against that to quite literally do right-wing terror in many nations, and there was a collective security agreement that the USSR was also a part of, we would be living in a very different world. But again, we're not there. We're not a part of that. We're not in that world. That's not a world in which we live in. The reason why NATO was built was for the express purpose of America utilizing European nations in a collective capacity against the USSR. They were terrified of communism winning. They were terrified of socialist communists who won the fucking resistance war within Europe from gaining prominence. If there are three separate factions, when you have the fascists and you have the communists and you have the liberal capitalists, okay? The feckless liberal capitalists, specifically led by the American feckless liberal capitalists, were able to utilize successfully in post-World War II the fascist militancy against the communists, even though the communists themselves were actively a part of the resistance and were able to purge the fascist forces within Europe. This is what happened time and time again in every fucking European country. This was done also with the help of NATO. Kind of a commie take, to be honest. I mean, yeah. It is a commie take. Chatters losing their minds? Yeah, I mean, what's the threat of NATO on Russia's borders now except to stop Russia's imperialist actions like what is going on right now? NATO is not a defensive pact. It has never been a defensive pact, and it still does not exist as a defensive pact. NATO has been utilized in the past to engage in America's efforts to do imperialism. It's basically yet another way for America's protection racket to continue. And while it seems like they are a justifiable force here, helping the Ukrainians rid themselves of Russian sovereignty, historically speaking, they have never been defensive, unless you think Kyle Rittenhouse was engaging in defensive maneuvers as well.
Estonia would all be Russia right now if we had gotten rid of NATO. I mean, Finland has been bordering Russia since 1949 as a member of NATO.
Wrong.
All of these nations joined NATO in the 90s. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, I think they all joined either 99 or...
Historically, blah, blah. We're talking about what's happening now. If you don't understand the inception of certain countries, you will never understand why other countries that they are literally diametrically opposed to or created, the pact that was created to fight against said country, you're just always going to just relegate back to good versus evil. This is the good forces are fighting against the evil forces. Of course, you can't ignore history when talking about these sorts of things.
2004.
Yeah.
And that was in direct opposition to at that point, Putin, right? You're talking late 90s, early 2000s.
And please don't talk about Eastern Europe. You literally don't have no clue what you are talking about. Thank you.
Since Putin take power.
Bro, Eastern Europe, like, let me just explain something to you, okay? I hope this day never comes, but one day you might recognize that Western Europe does not give a shit about you, okay? So just remember that. A lot of you dumb motherfuckers sit in the chat in like Estonia, Latvia, okay? And you're like, stay out of Eastern European people's business, okay? Listen, motherfucker, you're just territory to be conquered, okay? Either it's going to happen by Western forces or Russia. Shut the fuck up, acting like you have any sort of sovereignty in this matter. Jesus Christ, dude. It's pissing me the fuck off. And I say this as a Turkish person who was a dog to the American NATO war machine. So shut the fuck up. Stay out of Eastern European people's business. Like, shut up. Shut up. You're not a country, okay? You're literally a vassal state. Shut up. So fucking annoying.
1999. So I think the sort of optimistic vision, which is that if we had made more nice overtures to Boris Yeltsin, Yeltsin was a plutocrat, and he was an incompetent plutocrat at that. And then he was replaced by a much more competent plutocrat and a dictatorial plutocrat who had territorial ambition. And so I tend to be much more, hawkish in terms of not trusting other nations to spin on a dime and suddenly become our friends. And so the idea that
with Japan.
Very compassionate of you to just tell them to shut up. It's just so fucking annoying that they like come in here and like they're like, oh, dude, you don't know anything. Like, I get it, dude. I get why you're afraid of Russia. Okay, I understand that. I do. But shut the fuck up. Like, this is not about you. Okay, it's not. It's annoying. It's so annoying that you're just like, funny to say that when you come from Turkey too. I mean, at least I admit it. At least I admit my country's position, the country I came from. But Eastern Europeans think like, oh, we're a part of NATO now. It's different. It's like, no, it's not different, dude. You are literally, it's not different. I promise you. Okay? I hope that day never comes. But you're so fucking annoying. Not saying stuff like that is how you get Eastern Europeans to come after you, unfortunately. Okay. I mean, yeah, I know. Damn right. Roast that guy for advocating for his country's own best interest. Brother, your country's own best interest is insignificant in this conversation if we're talking about Russia versus Western powers, okay? That's my point. Like, people act like there's some kind of sovereignty for smaller nations, okay? There is no sovereignty for your nation or your personal interests. You understand that, right? You can it can make you feel bad when I say it, but it's just the unfortunate reality. You saying that from the American comfort home is funny too. Dude, I think I literally am saying that because I'm in the fucking Imperial Corps. If there was any sort of sovereignty or sanctity or security consideration for Ukraine, then there would be a no-fly zone implemented over Ukraine. There would be a fucking nuclear holocaust right now, potentially. But there isn't one. Do we see anything but just Javelin missiles being shipped in? Do you see a single American boot inside of Ukrainian borders? That's what the Ukrainians want. Ukrainians are living through World War III right now. And a lot of you living in Eastern Europe also recognize that, and that's a real fucking fear that you have deep down inside, that like this NATO pact might not hold. We're seeing what's happening to Ukraine. What if Russia came after us? The only reason why they would ever defend you, okay, is because you've already signed a pact, and because that would dictate that they absolutely, personally have to defend every inch of NATO territory to reassert their dominance as a global superpower. Okay? Ukraine wants to be in NATO. Are they ever going to be in NATO? No. And I know for a fucking fact that all you Baltic motherfuckers in the chat right now are legitimately terrified for understandable reasons. What if NATO doesn't defend us either? But don't fucking don't sit here and act like these guys give a fuck about your sovereignty, man. Because they don't. You're crazy. The only reason why NATO would ever defend any Baltic country is so that they can reassert their dominance. Okay? The moment that they feel like they can give an ounce of NATO territory back and Russia recognizes that and pounces on that weakness, it's over. You think they're going to go to nuclear war over fucking Latvia, dude? No. If they ever would defend a NATO country, it would be defended exclusively so they can reinforce their global power. Three days after Lithuanian Independence Day, I'm sorry. But they know it too. It's so crazy. It's just like the reason why understandably so many people in Eastern Europe are terrified of this is because they also have that deep suspicion that maybe there are a two-tier protection for NATO. Different kinds of countries that maybe get different kinds of protection and coverage from NATO that maybe they would not be afforded. That's why they get so fucking heated when you're like, dude, you have no sovereignty. You have no play in this conversation. Your sovereignty only extends as far beyond as your national leadership is interested in getting guns from America. The moment, if you think, now this obviously would never happen, but if you think tomorrow, the Lithuanian people decided we want complete sovereignty. We don't want to be part of NATO. We want to neutralize with Russia. You think NATO would allow that to happen? I fucking doubt it. Or even if they were like, okay, you're no longer a part of Russia. You're no longer a part of NATO. You're now a part of fucking Russia. They would literally do everything in their power to fucking reduce you to rubble. Yeah. Someone said NATO doesn't even defend Greece from Turkey, who are both its members. Again, don't compare NATO. Don't look at what Turkey does in NATO. Turkey is fucking insane, okay? Turkey is in a league of its own. I'm not saying that as a Turkish person. Turkey is also actively in conflict with France doing a proxy war in Libya currently, and also in Greece as well. So Turkey is in a unique predicament always. So stop mentioning Turkey. You will only be further confused if you bring up Turkey.
Japan and Germany, didn't it?
Well, no, we fully occupied Japan and Germany after nuking Japan twice.
Hi, HasanAbi. I've been in a coma since the year 2000. Did the newly elected president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, get accepted in his request to join the military alliance of NATO? Good one.
And after firebombing the living hell out of Germany. So we didn't actually do any of that to Russia.
But we welcomed Japan and Germany.
Wait. Dude, Bill Mahar is spitting right now, by the way. Is Bill Mahar like fucking...
And so the
Well,
idea
it
that...
with Japan and Germany, didn't it?
Well, no, we fully occupied. He was
Wait.
an incompetent plutocrat at that. And then he was replaced by a much more competent plutocrat and a dictatorial plutocrat who had territorial ambition. And so I tend to be much more, hawkish in terms of not trusting other nations to spin on a dime and suddenly become our friends. And so the idea
it worked
that...
with Japan and Germany, didn't it?
Well, no, we fully occupied Japan and Germany after nuking Japan twice and after firebombing the living hell out of Germany. So we didn't actually do any of that to Russia.
But we welcomed Japan and Germany.
They're right. Liberals would literally not even admit that in some ways. Liberals have a closer position to Bill Maher here than Ben. Ben's right. We did. We fucking destroyed Germany and we destroyed Japan, and then we have active military bases in both countries in perpetuity.
Germany.
We occupied them and forcibly deposed their
Of
emperor.
course, right after the war, we had to. I mean,
Oh, no, we still have troops there right now. I mean...
Yeah, this is right. This is true. He is correct about this.
we have
Because they
troops in
want
Okinawa.
them there.
Yes, but for
They
decades...
want them there. And they're on our side. They're not
They want them there. Okay, here's the thing. First of all, Okinawa literally couldn't be further than the truth. I can't speak for Rammstein. I can't speak for Germany, but pretty sure Japan does not want American troops in Okinawa, okay? Now, the main reason why our allegiances continued with Japan and Germany, though, is a material one. It's not because of some fucking idealistic, like, spiritual notion, okay? The real reason why Japan... the Japanese actually despise the military base, I'm pretty sure. Like, they literally are terrible. Anyway, so... But part of it is because, one, a lot of money was given to these countries after we fucking reduced them to rubble. And two, they're in a trade partnership now. Like, it's good business. That's the real reason. Trade is the real reason why these countries can work alongside one another, and not necessarily because like they are ideologically libtards now or some shit.
occupying them. They're not treating Germany and Japan as an enemy. We treat them as an ally.
What I'm saying is we forcibly turned them into an ally. I mean, we literally had American troops. We still have American bases in Germany. We have no American bases in Russia. Meaning the idea that we were going to take
bases.
I love that. I love Ben Shapiro's idea is like might is right politics, but like when someone else does it, he's like, no, it's unacceptable. I mean, dude, the way Ben's talking about like Germany and Japan, like industrial powerhouses. Like Russia can't even talk about like the Baltics that way, okay? But when you are living in the imperial core, this is what you can say and get away with and totally be justified in saying. And people will literally turn around and be like, you're so right, dude. You are so right, King.
Is in Germany to fight Russia, to fight the Soviet Union, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, but in the aftermath of we fully toppled the regime. And then we proceeded to occupy and help reconstitute the government in that regime.
We had to occupy them right after the war.
I'm not making the argument against occupation in Germany or Japan.
Okay,
the point I'm making is
we occupied them until they were able to stand on their own feet, and then we left. The bases there were for them because they
No, we didn't. We did not. No.
were our allies now.
Well, I mean,
we
needed to keep the bases there also in order to encourage Japan, for example, not to go after nuclear weapons. The idea is we'll defend you so you don't have to defend yourself. We don't want you rearming militarily. Right? We built an entire European Union and EC.
Yes. We also made.
Ben on foreign policy is pretty funny because he sometimes will have the premises correct, but then there's a secret premise that always is working behind the scenes that allows him to get to the exact opposite opinion that normally a human being with like a working, working part of their brain that allows them to feel empathetic thoughts would arrive at. And that part, of course, is the racism puzzle piece or the American exceptionalism puzzle piece that literally just always, he's just like, we had to occupy them. And then we stopped, and then we did trade relationships. And the real reason why we can't ever have an alliance with Russia in a similar capacity is because we don't have a military base in Russia. It's like, dude, that's not the only way that you can fucking do allegiances with countries. Okay, like you don't have to straight up have a military base in these countries to be able to work with them.
In order to keep Germany down, right?
That also made the emperor go on the radio and admit he wasn't a god.
Right. So I mean, so there's
try to make that speak.
There's a really good book by a woman whose name escapes me right now. It's called Secondhand Time, won the Nobel Prize a few years back, and it was an oral history of Russians talking about the Soviet Union post-Russia. So it's just her interviewing a bunch of people who are standing around in 2000 talking about what the Soviet Union was like. And there's one particular interview that's really striking where she's talking to an old Soviet who had been imprisoned, tortured in Lubyanka by the KGB, who'd had friends and family members shot by the KGB, and ended up, or the GRB at the time, and ended up, GRU at the time, and ended up in World War II seeing a person who'd tortured him. And the person looked at him and said, "We're both Russian." And he says, "I don't understand the world I'm living in. My kids want Levi's and they want radios. Why can't we have that Russian greatness back?" And I think the biggest mistake the West makes generally, and this is true with Russia today, it's true with China as well, is that we tend to think that everybody wants the same things that we want. They want material well-being. They want longer lives. They want their kids to go to good schools.
Wait, what does China and Russians want? That's not that.
On a fundamental level, unfortunately, I think that that's not always true. I think that...
What? Bro, what is he saying right now? Bro, what is he fucking saying? Stop.
Understand the world. And the person looked at him and said, "We're both Russian." And he says, "I don't understand the world I'm living in. My kids want Levi's and they want radios. Why can't we have that Russian greatness back?" And I think the biggest mistake the West makes generally, and this is true with Russia today, it's true with China as well, is that we tend to think that everybody wants the same things that we want. They want material well-being. They want longer lives. They want their kids to go to good schools. On a fundamental level, unfortunately, I think that that's not always true. I think that there are a lot of people who want... George Orwell wrote this about Hitler in 1940. He said, one of the reasons Hitler's successful is because what Hitler realizes is something that we in the West don't, which is we say we want a washing machine and we want a nice radio. What Hitler understands is sometimes people want blood, struggle, toil, and tears. Yeah. And if they don't want that, then it takes them a while to realize that the cost of that is too high. And maybe that's what we're seeing right now in Ukraine. We can hope is that the Russian people are beginning to realize. The Russian people, by the way, 5 years ago were polled about Stalin, and 70% of whom said, "Good guy." Maybe they're starting to realize.
What? Dude, he went to like 11 different places with this. I don't even know where to begin. Okay, just unhinged ramblings. Is he trying to say that people in Russia and China don't actually want comfort, safety, and security? Does he not realize that a world that is dominated by America, what people want and how their states operate at the behest of those desires, if those desires are in line with what the state is doing, let's say, is the death and destruction of the United States of America? I just want to point that out. Like wanting to, at the very least, end America's dominance and saying they want safety and security is not, it's not in contention with one another, okay? That is actually, as a matter of fact, totally in line with those wishes. I'm straight, just not always. Thank you for the 50 get the subs. I just want to point that out really quickly, okay? I want people to understand. If, the Chinese people's interest is about, safety, security, or if the Russian people's interest is safety, security, and comfort, and then their state is we are going to try to strike a blow at the heart of American dominance globally, then that is in line with their interests of safety and security. I think that's what people don't understand. It's very difficult to comprehend that from the American point of view because your state never has to fear. Realistically speaking, you never fear a much larger superpower destroying you. So you can't comprehend that. So, what do you do for work? This.
There are too
Well,
many
that's
costs.
And oh yeah, he's right about the part where many Russians wanted back the old USSR, but it's because many became jobless and had a better life, safer and more secure under the old Russian communist regime. Yes, I understand that, but that's because the current oligarchs fucking destroyed and plundered and robbed the Russian coffers.
Cost to
poll
this.
he took.
There have been multiple polls that show that Stalin is still held in fairly high esteem by a significant percentage of the population.
Oh, Stalin. I thought you meant Putin.
No, not
Sorry.
Putin, Stalin.
Yeah.
And so
Yes, because strongman is built into the Russian culture. And I also would say this about the Russian people.
It has nothing. It fell. The door's open. Yeah, it's just strongmen, dude. Wait, Americans are afraid of being invaded all the time. Hollywood built an entire industry around Americans being afraid of everything. Yeah, but it's not a realistic fear. Like, if you think as an American you have a fear of your safety and security, you've never. I mean, I know you're not American. You're Australian, but Korean. But Americans don't have a fear, a legitimate fear of their safety and security in a way that even like a regional territorial power like a Turkish person could have fear of. Okay? Like, it's so much. Dude, your maid has a nice beard. My maid also builds spaceships in his off time when he's not being my maid. Americans are so devoid of like legitimate fear of a larger superpower dominating it that we create our own boogeymen to be afraid of. Like, we consider people coming across the board to find a better future for themselves to be an invasion. Like, that is literally the height of luxury, dog. In comparison to the, people in the Baltics that I was shitting on earlier. Like, those people, they have some legitimate fears. Being dominated is in their shared history. Part of the reason why people lost their fucking minds after 9/11 was because for the first time in a very long time, and for the first time in American history, a foreign nation or foreign adversary or a foreign power was able to strike a civilian target. If you've lived anywhere else, you've seen civilian strikes, happen regularly. Even in Europe, that's happened regularly. You know who has done that, by the way? I don't know, a four-letter treaty organization, whatever you want to call it, had something to do with some civilian strikes happening. But, Americans will just not ever feel that.
You can't have communism for as long as they had it. And it's a little like being from a broken home and then being abused as a child. Communism was so evil. I mean, what it did to the psyche, the cynicism that it incurred in people, that you're not going to get over that in just a generation. I think it's a very cynical country, a very cynical mentality there. And, when I hear people nowadays, fact-free, talking about how, a lot of, if you look at Gen Z, it's like a lot of them think, oh, maybe communism, be good to give that another try. They just don't understand. Because they have this idea in their head that if something happened before they were alive, what does it matter? It didn't really happen. It's like, but stuff did happen. Stuff did happen. I know you weren't around for it, but
yeah, a lot of stuff happened, We did a lot of stuff on the capitalist side.
it really did. And other people noticed it. And we learned that lesson. You know, communism doesn't work.
I'm
and
straight,
it makes
just
people
not
very
always. Thank you
cynical.
for the
Remember
10
that
of the
old joke they
subs.
had about we pretend to work and they pretend to pay us? That was the system. I mean, that's not going to go away overnight.
You know what's not going away overnight? Fucking Red Scare propaganda in the mind of a boomer that is brain rotten like fucking Bill Mahar. You know? I see a lot of Gen Zers saying we should try fascism again. That too. That's real. That there is a real interest in Gen Z for that too. All of this comes from the anger and lack of security and volatility that younger generations feel under the crushing oppression of capitalism. The system of liberal capitalism is falling apart faster than it can pick itself up by way of the welfare state. Okay? There are a couple different reasons for why it's happening. Part of it is because, you know, eventually you're going to run out of territory that you can conquer, you know? Hey, if you like this video, please subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss out on any future videos.